Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and well, we have a Penn Battle III 3000 size fishing reel in for service today. This one's, well, it's been used for about a year from what I understand, and well, it's just kind of got the accumulated dirt and the like on here. It's in for a tune-up, which is good. It's about a year old. We're going to take this reel apart completely. We'll show you how it's made, show you how to service it, and well, if you're considering buying a Battle, you'll get a good inside look into what this reel is made of, and well, maybe that'll change or influence your decision one way or another. This Battle III has been upgraded with a Gomexus handle, and we're going to start by taking off the exterior pieces and parts. In this case, we're removing the handle. The handle is a screw-in handle. It screws into the main gear, and it screws in the same way that you would reel on retrieve. So if you're going to reel counterclockwise, the removal is to go in the clockwise direction, the opposite direction. This reel says it's got 15 pounds of max drag. It uses the HT100 washers, and we're going to remove the spool next. While I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you like the art of fishing reel service and repair, if you like to learn about fishing reels, maybe you're trying to make a choice between one or the other, well, these are topics that I address on a regular basis. And whether we're working on a spinning reel like this, or a trolling reel, or a bass fishing reel, or whatever, you'll get to see a large variety and, well, increase your knowledge of fishing reels and the fishing reel industry. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and do that. And if you do subscribe, make sure that you use that notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting the videos. All right, even though these reels have a little catch for the braid, I like to put a rubber band around them. That way it kind of holds that firm, so I don't have to worry about that getting tangled on the shaft. We will service the drag washers at the end of the how-to video, but for now we're just going to get underneath the case. We're going to take this reel completely apart, service it, and then we'll move on. So this is about a year old from what I understand from the owner, and well, he told me he's been fishing with it. It's obvious that it's had some good use, and that it's time for him to get that serviced. It's at the end of the season now, and no better time to service a reel than when it's over. That way you don't have to put away a dirty reel, and well, when that next time comes for the fish to strike, you're not worried about whether you remember to get it serviced or not. We just removed the bump guard, which is the plastic shield at the base, and now we can remove the other 3 screws. Typically I will lay the screws out on my desk to make sure that they're all the same size. Right now I'm doing that by putting them into my parts tray and laying them side by side. And I do recommend that whatever process that you use to organize your parts, that you know what you're going to do before you start taking the pieces and parts off. And in this case, we're just going right into the parts tray with it. I kind of know the answer to this one, but on a lot of reels, like Shimano reels, Daiwa reels, and some others, there are different size screws, and you do need to be aware of where that shorter screw or longer screw or screw with a different thread goes, so that when it's time to reinstall, you put it in its proper place. All 4 of these screws are the same size. That's not an issue here. This side case stops before the rotor ledge, so you can just remove the 4 screws and remove the case. Sometimes easier said than done. After a year of fishing out there, debris and dirt and the like does find a home in here, and well, just seals it a little bit tight. So I use a razor knife or a utility knife here just as a wedge, just to get under there and help it out. All right, we've got a sealed bearing in the side here, and this is the change on the Battle IIIs. It's the componentry in the main gear, and I forget exactly what the Penn term is. All of the major manufacturers have gone to their own version of a different alloy. This one may be Halcyon, I'm not quite sure what it is. But at any rate, Hagen, that might be another one that maybe belongs to somebody else, I don't know. We just removed the axle shaft by taking out the screw and the crosswind block. And then once we remove the screw from the crossline block, we can remove the crossline block itself. When I take these pieces and parts out, I like to clean them up right away. That way I can get the grease and dirt off of it and get it ready for when it's time to reinstall. So this one's about a year old. This will give you an indication of how Penn lubricates their reels when they're sent from the factory, and well, what happens to that grease after about a year of pretty good usage. So we've just cleaned off the axle shaft here. I was just feeling it, making sure that it's nice and smooth. No problem there. And now we should be able to remove the main gear. And I think in this version of the reel, this has gone to CNC cut or machined gears. So they're not stamped gears anymore. So they have upped the game. And again, I don't remember exactly what the Penn version of this is. I don't know if this is aluminum or some kind of alloy of aluminum or whatever. Cleaned it all up, inspected the teeth. They're in good condition. Both sides you want to check. And also notice that there is a brass shim that goes between the side plate bearing and the main gear right there. If you had it fall off, or maybe it got stuck to the back of the case here, whatever it is, just notice that that shim needs to be there for your service. On your crosswind gear itself, that was covered in grease. There is a screw that holds the crosswind gear in place. We're going to remove that. And then we're going to remove the gear, because you do want to make sure that you can not only clean the pieces and parts, but that you clean the case, because that's where all the grease is going to get spun off and accumulate. Just checking the teeth here. If you have any question about whether the gear is clean, just take a bristle brush. That one's got some dirt on it. Pull it through. Make sure that all the teeth channels are nice and clean. You want to check this from two sides. You want to check to make sure that all of the teeth are uniform this way, and then you want to check this way, make sure all the points are the same as well. If they're not in good condition, you want to make sure that you replace them. Okay, on the surface of the reel, if your bail is working fine, and it did work when I was testing it, just hit the key parts with some penetrating oil just to loosen up any dirt that may be in there. Flip it back and forth. That'll work the penetrating oil back into the seams. And of course, if you're having an issue with the bail, you want to take that off, clean it up. So I think the last reel I did like this, it was dropped in the sand and it was clear. As you worked like this, you heard a grind, and if that's the case, then you want to make sure you take it apart and make sure that it gets serviced well. All right, we're looking for a 12 millimeter wrench here. No, we're not. We're looking for an 11 millimeter wrench. It's good to have the tools right at hand. That way you don't have to put the project down. I keep mine pretty close. So in here, there's a little plastic ferrule. It's going to go inside your pinion gear. Just know that it's there, just like that other piece. I'll pull it out here to show you. This is the ferrule. It helps to align the axle shaft going down. And it's always a good thing to know where that has gone. Remove the rotor. And then what you're going to see here is a rather standard setup for most of the modern Penn spinning reels. So this stack here doesn't vary much between the Battle and the Fierce and the Pursuit. They're all pretty much the same. Some of the upper end ones use a different anti-reverse type system, or they have a fail-safe. Let's put it that way. They have a fail-safe anti-reverse system, so it's kind of a double anti-reverse. Again, you see me taking the 3 screws out, laying them next to each other, making sure that they're all the same. These are all the same. You'll also notice that when I do this, I have a paper towel under my reel. That's so that I don't pick up any grease off of my board or leave any grease on the board for the next project over. All right, we have the cases apart now. I'm just going to do a light spray. There's not much grease in here. That kind of tells you a little bit about how Penn stacks up the reel and what the grease looks like after 1 year of use. But we're going to grab this. I'm going to use some cotton swabs. The penetrating oil I use as a degreaser, and I find it has good success with that. Clean that up. There is still a bearing in the back case right here. I'm going to test it. It's working fine. And these are sealed bearings, so well, you're not going to get much lubrication in them. You're not going to get any in it. It's sealed. All right. Notice up top here another one of those brass shims. So we have a shim that's going to go between that last bearing and the rotor. Another sealed bearing here. Notice on this that there's an indentation on the bottom collar. So that's going to go on the downside. You're going to be flush on the top side. This is your anti-reverse clutch and sleeve. And that sleeve, that one's got a little bit of grease on it. You really don't want grease on that sleeve. That sleeve becomes a friction device for stopping the reel, and if you get grease on there, sometimes the anti-reverse has a tendency to skip. All right, one more piece here. This is also a sealed bearing, and there's a shim on the bottom of the sealed bearing that sits before that pinion gear. One more quick cleanup here. We're going to just take that same brush, pull it through the pinion gear, the lower part where the old grease is. You can see how it comes out and that it had some in the tracks. And I've been looking as I've been doing it, making sure that the tracks are all uniform, that we don't have any skip or the like there. Time to reassemble the reel. So you've had a little bit of a look inside. There's 4 or 5 ball bearings in here. And use fishing reel grease. I'm using Penn Precision Reel Grease. That's off camera, but here you go. That's the Penn Precision Reel Grease. That's the pound container. You don't need a pound of grease when you service your reel. It's perfectly fine to go on the internet, get the reel grease and the reel oil. They're often sold as a convenience pack in a 1 or 2 ounce amount. And that's plenty for several reels, not just for one. Okay, remember there's an indentation on this side. Bring all of that stack down. Make sure you have that washer on the top. So this stack then, as I mentioned, it's going to work pretty much the same on several different versions of the Penn spinning reels. So we have a shim washer, a bearing, the anti-reverse clutch and inner sleeve, a mounting collar, another bearing up top, and finishes it with another shim washer. So this is ready for reinstall. When you reinstall, make sure that the bumps in the anti-reverse clutch sit in the housing properly and that you're flush here. When you are flush, you can take the collar. And we have those 3 screws I'm going to go to my parts tray for. Those 3 screws hold the collar down. And I always have trouble with those small screws, so I'm just going to put a little dab of grease onto the end of the screwdriver. That can generally help me hold it steady while I try to get it started. And those of you that have been watching for a while know that me and these little screws don't play well together. So if we go throwing them about, dropping them off the screwdriver, etc., it's kind of business as usual. You'll also notice I'm wearing a latex glove on my non-dominant hand. I am a right-handed person. I wear this on my left hand. It helps to keep the greases, dirt, and debris off that hand anyway. I've tried the gloves on both hands. I'm not very successful at that. I guess it's a matter of not liking the feel or what have you. But I do recommend, if you can, just be careful with the chemicals you're working on. You're never quite sure what's in a reel and whether you're going to be allergic to it or something else. So just watch it as you do it. Here's our rotor again. There's 2 flat sides here, kind of a rectangular side here. Just align those. Bring it over. Remember that there is this little plastic ferrule that goes in now, sits inside that gear as we had mentioned. I'm going to take the cap nut. And I like this cap nut because you can't over tighten it. It's got a flange on the top part of it that, well, when you get to the top of the pinion gear, you can't turn it any further. And I like that feature. All right, tighten that down. Give it a spin. Make sure it spins nice and easy, and that's exactly what it's doing. Get the collar for your tie-down clamp. Bring that over. And then go to your parts tray. Let's get the screw. It's another Phillips head screw. Find the hole where you can tie the flange down. And then bring that in. Okay, that's the top end of the reel. On the bottom end of the reel now, we've cleaned all the pieces and parts. You want to get grease on the oscillation gear next. All three sides, the teeth, the back, and the front all get grease. This is a workhorse. The teeth here are going to be driven by the teeth on the back of the main gear. The slide here with the stud is going to drive the axle shaft up and down. That sits over the insert in the case. Then we need that broad screw that's going to hold that in place. So far we've done pretty good. I haven't dropped anything, but of course as soon as I say that I almost lose that screw. Let's get this one down. Okay. Next up then is our main gear. We've cleaned that, so we want to do the same thing. We want to get grease on there, and you'll notice I'm using an artist's brush. I like the artist's brush. It doesn't shed hairs, so I don't worry about losing the hair into the mechanicals of the reel. Get it on the back end, which drives the oscillation gear, gets them on the inside of the bearing, makes that run a little bit smoother as well. All you do is simply place that in, just like that. Oscillation slide is next. And all you need is, the grease in that channel there. You don't need it on the front end of this piece. Bring that over, and this little tip is going to go under that restraint there. And square that up. And next we want to grab that axle shaft. Now only a light coating of grease on that axle shaft, because as you saw we have a ferrule that's going to hold this pretty tight. If you put a lot of grease on there, that's going to rub off as it goes through the ferrule. Bring this down, align that with the bottom of your shaft, and you should see the hole come through for your flathead screw that's going to hold those two in place. Again, I go to my parts tray for that. And we'll tighten that down. And essentially that's the inner workings of the reel. And again, if you can do this one, you can do the Penn Fierce and you can do the Penn Pursuit reels as well. You'll find differences, well, you used to find differences in the drag washers and in the bearings as well. Okay, this one's sealed. You don't need to do anything. If you want to put a little coat of grease onto the shaft there, that's fine. Before I go too much further, I'm going to take some rod and reel cleaner here, put it onto a kitchen scrubby, and clean this plate. As we mentioned, this one's probably been, I'm going to guess, freshwater fishing, maybe river fishing. Looks like it's got more dirt than it does kind of a salt buildup or anything. So, clean that all up. A lot of times I'm asked on the specs. On here it says the gear ratio is 6.2 to 1. That's a nice gear ratio. And per turn, you're going to pull in 35 inches of line. All right, bring that plate back on. Get a nice crisp click. Make sure that your seams are nice and tight all the way around. If you notice that one side's bulging or you can't get it in or any other kind of issue there where it's not sitting flat on flat, stop, go back, take that plate off, find out what's going on underneath. Now, somewhat easy to say when you're working on a spinning reel. Maybe you don't incur that same kind of an issue, but a lot of times I've noticed with bait casting reels that come into the shop and some others, that somebody tried to force closing the case, or maybe something was not sitting properly, and well, it just damaged some pieces and parts, bent them out of shape, broke springs, all those kinds of things. You don't want to do that, so just take your time, be patient, and make sure that you set this up correctly. All right, we've got 3 out of 4 now. One more screw here. That's always a tough one for me. While I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you got a problem with the reel, you just can't understand what's causing the problem, whatever it may be, if you leave that question in the comment section, I will try to help you out. I've got a lot of years of experience doing this. I don't mind sharing that experience with you. And if I can help you keep your reel fishing, or repair a reel that maybe is not performing properly, I don't mind doing that. I do answer the questions in the morning, and just a word of caution, if you do try to call, that's the least efficient way to reach me, and I generally can't answer the phone because I'm in my shop doing videos or doing the reel repairs or doing something that kind of prevents me from picking that phone up, and I apologize, be forewarned. Okay, just going to clean that up. You can see how nice a job that rod and reel cleaner does. Alright, just cleaned that up pretty nicely. You can see it's been used. There's evidence of paint being lost on the bail, but otherwise it seems to be working nice and solid. There's one more piece here. This is the bump guard. There is a tab right here that's going to fit into the hole up here. Put the tab in first before you bring the bottom end of that bump guard in. And now we can use a screw to reset that. And right now the only thing in my parts tray is the handle. That's all good, right? Because that tells me everything that I took off has been put back. That's another reason why I prefer the parts tray. You don't tend to lose the pieces and parts. All right, tighten this Comexis handle up. Comexis is an aftermarket manufacturer. They make a nice product, and if you have the opportunity to replace a handle, or if you're looking for something more leveraged, it is a good product. There's a clip here that rides in the groove. We want to remove that. Find the end of the clip right there and start working it around by inserting a screwdriver or a pick or something into those little slots here. Now this is an interesting setup. It's changed from earlier models. This one uses round keyed washers, and it actually uses the drag washers as the eared washers that hold the spool. So when you take these off, you're going to see that there's 4 tabs on here, one on each side, and they go into the slots in the reel itself. Okay, these are HT100 washers. They're Penn's version of a Carbon-Tex washer. And Carbon-Tex washers are optional to grease. I'm going to grease these just because this reel has been around a while. When you do, wipe off any excess and make sure you can see the cross-hatching in those washers. One more thing I want to do here. I don't see any dirt in here, but that doesn't mean it isn't, so I'm just going to use a cotton swab to try and pull through on that, and a little bit of a paper towel to wipe the inside. Alright, first one was in. Find the 4 tabs. They go in one of the 4 slots and seat on the bottom. These are the keyed washers. This is a 6 washer set, so the first drag washer goes in, then the first one of the metals. Second one will do the same thing, and now I'm using my glove as a tool, so you can see I'm keeping the grease off my hand as I use that to rub that in, and then I'll grab that paper towel, wipe off any excess, and this is the second one that goes in. Again, make sure that your metals are nice and clean. This one goes in second. One more, do the same thing. Find the slots, and then the last metal. So another kind of indication that this has probably been fished in fresh water is that drag stack not have a lot of salt residue in it. So put the clip back into the grooves. I'll take the glove off now, because as I go to mount now, I'm just going to transfer whatever grease I had on that glove back onto the reel that I just cleaned. That doesn't seem to make any sense. Bring your spool over. This is an interesting one. When you go to put the adjuster knob down, this little rectangle here, you need to get that over the axle shaft before you can start turning to adjust that knob setting. All right, so we've learned a lot about the Penn Battle III Battle spinning reel. Get them confused all the time. Saw inside how it works. It's got a beautiful gear system in it. It's got a lot of ball bearings in it. Everything was nice and clean, which we saw after 1 year of use that the inside, well, it needed a cleanup, but it certainly wasn't bone dry from grease or that. I think the factories tend to over-grease when they sell the reel. Yeah, it says it's CNC gear technology, so whatever that metal is it's cut on CNC. We showed you that it's a 15-pound max drag, picks up 35 inches per turn. It's a 6.2 gear ratio. And let's give it a test, because this one's ready to go fishing again. Nice smooth operation. Look at that handle. That handle will spin and spin and spin, which takes the fatigue out of your arms. The 3000 size reel, well, that's a good size reel now that braid is around. Kind of replaces what used to be the 5000 size reel with monofilament. About the same line capacity, smaller form function, less weight. So if you're using this to cast plugs or lures, less fatigue. So all around, good reel. All right, I hope you've enjoyed that. I want to take a moment to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, everybody who's involved in day-to-day in keeping us safe and out of harm's way. And I want to thank you, the viewers, for making this channel what it is. I want to wish everybody a great day on the water, fast friends fishing, and just a wonderful experience when you're working on your reels. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.